The title that I have in my Bible says a cry for help. And as I was reading through this chapter, I noticed that there was a lot of prophecies about Jesus in this chapter. There's many times when a verse from this psalm is quoted in many of the New Testament Bibles. In fact, it's quoted by all four Gospels, and also in Paul's letter, and in Peter's letter as well. So clearly, if it's quoted by that many people, it's a very important psalm. And we'll look into a few of those verses in here that are quoted by the New Testament. So we'll be flipping through a lot of. You guys don't have to flip because I have the verses written down. Um, but if you guys want to, I guess. So we'll start from verse 1. Verse 1 reads, God save me, the waters has risen to my neck. And we can see here that David is calling for help, because that's when you say, God save me, right? Usually it's when he's going, or when you're going through a trouble. And David is probably running from Saul again here, I'm assuming. I don't really know, but that's usually what's happening. Saul is trying to kill him, and David is trying to run away. But he's clearly in trouble. And it says, the second part of that verse says, the water has risen to my neck. And I just remember when I was a kid, my cousin's house, they had a pool. And you guys know how pools are usually one end of it is deeper than the other, right? So it was like 3 feet on one end, and as you get closer to the other end, it gets deeper and deeper, and all the way into 9 feet. And a smart kid decided to push me down by the 6 feet area, and I didn't really know how to swim back then. And I was a kid, like I remember falling in the water, and I was just struggling, and it reminded me of this verse. It says like the water has risen to my neck, and at that time all I could do was call for help and save me, right? And the psalmist is clearly going through a similar struggle. That was a time when I thought I was gonna die because I didn't know how to swim, and I was like 5 feet, and I'm in 6 feet deep. So it's a time when you're going through a struggle and you're asking God for help, and David is showing how badly he needs God right now to come and save him. And we can see that in Peter's life as well. We see that actually in Matthew 14 verses 31. This was when he was in the boat, and Jesus came, and people thought that he was a ghost. Then Peter came out. I'll just read the verse in Matthew 14 verse 31. It says, "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." And that's how this Psalm 61 verse 1 starts off with as well, right? Save me, Lord. It's when you're going through a deep trouble situation, when you really desperately need God, and you cry out and say, God, save me. And when we go into verse 2, it says in verse 2 that I am sinking down in the mud. There is nothing to stand on. I am in deep waters. The flood covers me. We always think that David is someone who's always standing on a rock, because throughout the Psalms it says like I have an example. It says in Psalm 40 verses 2. It says this is and also another Psalm of David. He says, "He lifted me out of the pit of destruction, out of the sticky mud. He stood me on a rock. He made my feet steady." But we can see that David, who was loved by God, he even had his times when he was sinking in sand. And we are just like him. We have times when we're also sinking in sand. So those are the times when we need to call out to God as well. And then when we go into verse 3, this is a verse that is quoted in the New Testament. So verse 3 says, I am tired from calling for help. My throat is sore. My eyes are tired from waiting for God to help me. And when I was reading this, it actually reminded me of two verses, actually. So when I was reading this, it made me feel like it was talking about Jesus a little, because this is kind of what Jesus went through. My throat is sore, my eyes are waiting for help, waiting for God to help me. If you guys remember on the cross, Jesus was thirsty and he asked for water, but he didn't get it. And it's kind of similar here. I tried calling for help. My throat is sore, and it says that in John 19 verses 28 to 30. After this, Jesus knew that everything had been done to make the scripture come true. He said, "I am thirsty." There was a jar full of vinegar there. So the soldiers soaked a sponge in it. They put it in the sponge on a branch of hyssop plant and lifted it to Jesus' mouth. Jesus tasted the vinegar. Then he said, "It is finished." He bowed down. He bowed his head and died. So this is clearly pointing towards to what happened in the cross. And in fact, I think in Psalm 69, in the same chapter, we didn't read this verse because it's towards the later, it says the exact same verse that I just read. It's in Psalm 69 verses 21. So if you could scroll down or turn the page, I guess. It says that they pulled gall my food and gave me vinegar for my thirst. So that is clearly pointing towards what was done at the cross. And the second part of this verse 3, it says, "My eyes are tired from waiting for God to help me." And you can see that in thought I wrote that down. Okay, so I think that was also a verse that I wrote down, but it's not in here anymore. But it is also pointing towards God. And a lot of the times when we're waiting for God to help us, it might seem like He's taking a little long to come to us, but He's actually making us walk through a situation where we are learning things about Jesus. We are learning things, and we are being molded at that time. And when we go into now verse 4, this is verse 4 reads, "There are more people who hate me for no reason than hairs on my head. Those who want to destroy me are powerful. My enemies are liars. They make me pay back what I did not steal." And when you read through this as well, it probably reminds you of a lot of what happened to Jesus as well. A lot of people are hating David, or David is writing, a lot of people are hating him for no reason. That's similar to what happened to Jesus. If you look at Jesus' life, people were hating him for no reason. He probably had more enemies than friends. He was blamed for things that he did not do. And you can read this in Matthew 27 verses 41 to 44. It says, "The leading priests and the teachers of the law and the Jewish elders were also there. These men were made full of Jesus and said, 'He saved other people, but he cannot save himself.' People say he's the king of Israel. If he's the king, then let him come down from the cross. Then we will believe. He trusts in God, so let God save him now. If God really wants him, he himself said, 'I am the Son of God.' And in the same way, the robbers who were being killed on the cross beside Jesus also insulted him." So you can see that a lot of people, the priests, the teachers of the law, they all mocked Jesus, even the thief on the cross. And it says that in the verse 4 we just read. And if you also look in, so this verse 4 is actually fulfilled in the New Testament as well. In John 15 verses 25, it says this was spoke, but it says, so this is before Jesus' crucifixion, and it says that, but this happened so that it was written in the law would be true. They hated me for no reason. So this is a straight quote out of the New Testament that was quoted in the Psalm verses 4. And then when we go into verse 5, it says that, "God, you know what I have done wrong. I cannot hide my guilt from you." And as I was reading this, it just reminded me of what happened at the garden with Adam and Eve. It says here that the verse says, "God, you know what I have done wrong. I cannot hide my guilt from you." And what Adam and Eve tried to do after they sinned was they tried to hide, but God knew where they were. right? Even though they try to hide, God knew where they were. And it says here, I cannot hide my guilt from you. And there's many people throughout the Bible that were regarded as very high but committed sins. Like Moses killed David with Bathsheba, and I just mentioned about Adam. Paul killed many people. But even though these people are very, very seen as high in God's presence or in the Bible, they still have committed sins, and we need to know that we are just like them. We are sinners, and we cannot hide our guilt from God either. Whatever sins we're committing, we need to make sure that we're always confessing every single day to God, because there are things that we do wrong without even knowing that it was wrong, and we need to confess our unknowing sins as well. Um, and then when we go into verse 9, it says that my strong love for the temple completely controls me. When people insult you, it hurts me. And this verse is actually broken down into two parts, and it's fulfilled in two different sections of the Bible. So we'll look at the first one first. The first part of it is fulfilled in John 2, verses 17. It says, when this happened, the followers remembered what was written in the scriptures. So this is what I'm about to read is the quote that's directly coming from Psalm 69, verses 9, the first part. My strong love for you, for your temple completely controls me. So that's the first part that is quoted from Psalm 69, verses 9. And the second part of that verse is quoted in Romans 15, verses 3, says, even Christ did not live to please himself. It was as if the scripture said, when people insult you, it hurts me. And that was the second part. So as you can see, like there's a lot of Bible verses that I'm bringing out today, but it's just to show that there's a lot of prophecies in this chapter, and it's quoted by many of the New Testaments. And the last verse I just read was really touching to me, because it's talking about how the psalmist is hurt when other people insult you. And that's really true, because when someone you love is being made fun of or insult them, you would feel some type of way. You would be a little angry towards the other person who's making fun of them, right? In the same way, the psalmist is saying that when other people make fun of God, it kind of hurts him. He doesn't feel good. When we live in a world where most people are not believers, and I'm sure you guys have heard many people seen or heard being made fun of Jesus. How does that make you feel? Does it make you feel hurt even a little? If it doesn't, it might show your relationship with Christ, because if you truly love a person and that person is being made fun of, it's gonna hurt you in some type of way. And it's not a time for you to go and argue with them, but it's a time for you to set aside and pray for that person. And I just want to leave the church with that. Thank you.